Hello everyone, and welcome back to my series where I talk about my Minecraft recreation of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And last time we left off talking about the Nut Room, and in this episode we're going to be mainly talking about the glass elevator ride. Before we start, I guess I'll just explain real quick what this is. So this is the glass elevator ride that you see in the movie. It's the tour route that they take that ultimately ends up with them stopping at the TV room. And this is different and not connected to my previous elevator system I talked about in my other episodes, which act as a fast travel system that get you from place to place instantly in the factory. And I just use the glass elevator as a way to justify that actually happening. So they're not connected to each other, although it's implied that they are. So for over here for the Nut Room, I actually had to add a second elevator stop that you don't see this in the movie because, in the movie it would just be one elevator to go everywhere, but with my factory I basically have two elevator systems. So this is the quick travel, elevator stop for the Nut Room. But the way you get onto the movie tour elevator that's much more scenic and takes you through a lot of different areas of the factory, the only way you can access it is through this elevator door in the Nut Room. So we're going to go ahead in there and take a look at it. So these buttons are just for decoration. They're all activated by the pressure plates. So we walk in through here, and my elevator system for this factory, I chose to go with the minecart direction. Some people will have it where it's just a glass tube that you walk through. A lot of them do use minecarts, so I also use minecarts. You'll notice that I have two different tracks here. One says factory tour, the other says under construction. The factory tour is self-explanatory. This is the track that will take us from here through all the different scenes all the way to the TV room. This over here is a separate track that follows it all the way along, but when it gets to a certain point, it actually splits off and it will go into another part of the factory that is not yet built. It probably won't be built for quite a long time, but I wanted to plan ahead and add this now so I didn't have to do it after the fact. But this will take you to another wing of the factory that will likely just house many more rooms, that kind of thing. So the way you start this ride is you go up on this chest and you just get a minecart, and you sit down in it, click the button, and it launches you, and you're able to clear through the glass here. I just put this here so you're not able to just go ahead and walk out, unless obviously you break the glass, but you're not supposed to. So you're supposed to take the minecart, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to fly around and look at everything. So this is basically what you're greeted with as soon as you start on the minecart track in that little box right there. You come out to this giant room and you see all these buildings here, and these are actually the exteriors of the Nut Rooms. And in the movie, for a few seconds, you get some shots of this area, and you can actually make out that there are 6 Nut Rooms, not just one of them. This is the one that you actually go into, and this is the one they went into in the movie. But there are 5 others that surround it as well. And I also wanted to point out, excuse the low frame rate in this area, because this area is so large. I had to turn my chunks all the way up to 32. So it's pretty taxing on most PCs. So my frame rate's significantly lower than it normally is when I play on 27 chunks. So just bear with me for this segment. But yeah, these are the exteriors of the Nut Room. And in the movie, you can't actually see how the characters would access the other 5 Nut Rooms. You don't see any pathing or anything like that. So I also didn't add any of that. So the other 5 are not accessible unless you just flew over there and broke through yourself. However, all 6 of them do have a full, complete interior, minus the cats, because that would just create more lag than was necessary. So only this one has the cats to simulate the squirrels, but the other 5 have a full interior with everything in it, just like this one does. So that's pretty neat. And then what I really like are the nut distribution system up here and then the garbage disposal system down there. So in the movie, you get like 1 or 2 seconds where the camera is sitting right about here where the elevator is coming towards the screen, and you can make out that there's this giant octopus looking thing up on top that goes down into these colorful funnels, and it's implied that this is the way that the nuts are dispersed into each one of the Nut Rooms, down the funnel into the sorter, and then the squirrels take over. And this is pretty much exactly what the design looks like in the movie. It's this big sphere in the middle with goldish trim with these giant arm pipes that go to each room. and they vary and go up and down and look really crazy. So I think that looks really cool. I'm really happy with how that turned out. And then down here you get another look for only a second or two of the incinerator system. So this is actually movie accurate, where each one of the chutes goes down into a little collection sphere right here, and then there are long pipes that go into a central sphere, and it's basically implied that this is the incinerator. So I wanted to make sure I had that, and it's a very bland looking design in the movie. It's just basically gray, so that's why it looks pretty boring, and it's just gray here. This is where the minecart track comes over, and you drop down and go off that way into the Fudge Mountain room. What I want to talk about real quick also are the support systems. So throughout the entire section of the movie where they're on the elevator ride, they're underground, and you see these giant columns and connecting beams, and I'm assuming that these are just, foundation supports for the factory itself. And I wanted to make sure I got these in here and to other areas of the factory, because it adds a tremendous amount of scale to the room. This actually goes from the world limit height all the way down to bedrock, so I physically cannot make these any taller. I wish I could, but it really does make the room feel gigantic. So going over into this direction, you're greeted with this giant ice sphere with these cool little, almost tower-looking things that go off of it. This is basically as good as I could get them to look, going off the way they looked in the movie. And then over to the left, there are a few little Oompa Loompa huts that you can see briefly, and I guess this is where they live. And there's a path that goes off, and I put some more up there. And then there are also some very hard to see pipes off in the distance that just kind of go across the whole room in the movie. So I wanted to put those in. I'm actually not in love with how this looks. I probably am going to replace the iron block pipes with something much darker so it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. So that will be changed in the future. But we're going to go into the Fudge Mountain scene, and I'm actually going to turn down my chunks. We'll just put them on 24, just so the frame rate goes back up. And the reason you have to play with such a high chunk amount is because this room is so large that it starts to bleed in when it hits the end of the render distance. So this is just a giant black box that houses all this stuff. So we're going to go into here, and it's just a big sphere that leads into another sphere. This is the biggest sphere of any of them on my factory build. I don't even remember the dimensions of this. I'm pretty sure it's, with the world edit, like a size like 200 or 150 sphere, something like that. It's very large. And it houses the Fudge Mountain, so it just has the minecart track going through here with a snowy covered Fudge Mountain. And I tried my best to make it look as it did in the movie. It's not great, it's not terrible. I used a brush tool to make this go a lot faster so I don't have to build it by hand. And the way I got it covered in snow was I just took the entire top off of this dome, and I just let the weather snow basically and cover the entire thing up. So that's how I was able to easily get it covered in snow. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. It is accurate enough in terms of its look and height that I don't really feel like redoing it. The one in the movie isn't some ultra huge thing. It would be really cool if it went all the way to the top of this dome here, but in the movie it doesn't do that. The elevator actually rides higher than the peak of the Fudge Mountain in the movie. And because of the height that I decided to build the elevator track at, that basically immediately limited me to the height that I built this, because if it was any taller than the elevator track, it would be inaccurate. So that's why it's only as tall as it is, but I'm happy enough with it. Eventually I want to add some villagers on here to look like the Oompa Loompas in the movie that are mining. But yeah, this is a very cool looking room. This will also be the only room in the entire factory that does not have an elevator stop to fast travel in here. Just because I just feel like it'd be really out of place. This is basically purely an aesthetic room that you're just meant to go past and not, spend too much time in here. So there will be no way to access it other than this little elevator track. But yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. Next up, we have the Cotton Candy Sheep room, and I really like this room. This is another one of my favorites. I tried my best to make this as faithful to the movie as I could. And this is the little scene where we briefly see the pink sheep getting sheared by the Oompa Loompas, and then they go off, and then their wool is basically put into a little machine here with some funky looking pipes that go into these big canisters that house the implied cotton candy wool. So, and then in the background there are these 3 canisters that hold more of it. And yeah, it's a pretty simple room. You know, like I said in some of my other videos, the design of these rooms are generally very simple, and they don't fill up much of the room at all. You know, the majority of the floor space is unused. So it makes it quite easy to recreate these rooms because there just genuinely isn't that much you have to build. But yeah, I really like how this turned out. This room and the Fudge Mountain room, I just used natural light to light these scenes up. For the most part, I do have some lights around, but the natural light is best to light these areas up. Next up, we have the Puppet Hospital, and this is the infirmary basically where all the burned puppets from the beginning of the movie are taken care of, and we only see this room for only a few seconds before we go to the next scene. Now, the color that I used for the walls is a little weird for most other people's recreations. Usually they would use something like white concrete or white wool or white terracotta. The reason I used lime terracotta is because this room in the movie has a green tinge to it. It's almost like the camera has a green filter on it. And there's these giant white windows that have a white background that light the room up very bright. The green tinge really just stuck with me. And there's no block in Minecraft really that covers that color. I didn't want to use wool because it's even more green than the terracotta. And the concrete is, darker than the terracotta as well. So I didn't want to just use white terracotta because I really did want to get that hint of green. The downside is now it's overwhelmingly green. And I always go back and forth if I should keep it like this or replace it with a white block and maybe make the windows a green or something like that. But I think I'm going to keep it green, at least for the foreseeable future, because once again, I just kind of like it. And I think it also makes my recreation different from everyone else's, because to my knowledge, I don't think anyone else has used green for their Puppet Hospital room. The elevator track, the block I use is glass for this area. Due to the height and the width of this room, it's very skinny, and when you're in a minecart, it's very hard to see to the bottom just because there's not much to see on the sides. So I replaced these blocks with glass just so you're able to see at least a little bit the floor below you. So that's why this area has glass instead of the gray concrete that I use everywhere else. And then through here, we get the shot of the outside of the Puppet Hospital, just like how the movie looks. And then we reach the administration offices, and this is basically the spot where the elevator goes down a very far amount of distance, and we see all these different floors with Oompa Loompas working in the administration offices. I don't have the villagers and the chairs. I don't really plan to put them there. It's just kind of empty. And then at this point, the elevator goes off into the exploding candy room. Now, because of the way Minecraft is, you only have so much vertical distance you can build. We are currently at negative 28 out of, negative 63 or whatever it is of the build height. And the area after this has a giant distance that it has to travel downward for it to be accurate to the movie. So there was no way that I could start that room right here at this level and have it be anywhere near long enough to be convincing. So what I had to do was add a little spot in the track where it activates the command block and it teleports you right to the other side of this black wall. It's literally just one block over, but this black wall hides the fact that you're down so low. And then it sends you to the top, and then you continue on towards the exploding candy room at the top of the world building limit. So it gave me a lot more space, to build. And let's just go over there. It'll make more sense if you actually see it. So I did a lot of research on this, and to my knowledge, there's no way to reliably teleport a minecart and the player with an activating rail. So I basically just have it set up where it'll only teleport the player. It will not teleport the minecart. So we'll get in here. We'll just jump in, and it'll teleport me to here, but not the minecart. So it brings you to this little area where you have to get another minecart, put it in, and go off. But it brings you here, and this may be, other than the chocolate room, my favorite spot in the build here. I just absolutely love how this turned out with the giant warning signs, the giant towers that go up with the lights. This is another area where you should have your render distance as high as possible, because then you get this leakage if it's not. Just for the sake of having a smooth video, I'm going to keep it lower here, so just ignore the light. But yeah, you come through the little target here, and then it brings you over into the area where all of the fireworks and all the explosions are happening. So these are the guns where the Oompa Loompas are stationed, and they load the cannons up, and they basically just have target practice at all these targets. I wanted to really try to give a sense of scale to this room to make it look as good as I could. So I added in a lot more targets in the background further away that I did not light up to intentionally create a sense of distance. And then the elevator track drops from here all the way down there. Now you'll probably notice there are no firework explosions going off, and that's because when the system is running, it will drop your frame rate easily by 30 or 40 FPS depending on your PC. So right now I have it off, and I actually have it all wired up with redstone and command blocks to one single lever that can turn the whole thing on, you know, just with a simple lever switch. So behind all the targets I actually have the little areas, and let me get a light block here and I can better show you. Whoops. So these blocks here just house the command block with some redstone in here to make sure it fires off repeatedly. And I have, you know, like a command in here that I got off the internet. I found a like firework maker website, so it was very easy. And I just pasted in what kind of fireworks I wanted to all these command blocks. And then to keep track of which box, excuse me, is which firework color, I always put the color that the firework is on the side here. So this one is green. This only fires green fireworks every few seconds. And all of the targets that have a light block in them have a firework dispenser basically behind them to make the scene look really good. So it basically is just a giant tower that I have here with redstone that goes all the way up and down, connecting all of these. And then I'm going to try to find the lever. I actually have it hidden in sort of a bad spot. And before the world download goes out, I need to make sure I move this so people can turn it on and off themselves. But it's somewhere around here. Let me find it real quick. So when I was building all of this, I just decided to hastily put the lever right here to control the whole system. So when the redstone is powered, it turns everything off. And when I throw the lever, the fireworks will all turn on. And just because the sheer amount of distance some of the redstone has to travel, it takes a few minutes for all of the fireworks to turn on. And because they run through command blocks, it will actually spam your chat with commands whenever you're in distance of the fireworks. So when I put the world download out, I will have a good disclaimer at the beginning to make sure that you have your chat settings to hidden. Not commands only, not shown. It has to be hidden unless you want your whole chat to be spammed, you know, with the commands. So I'll just turn it on real quick here. And you'll see them starting to go. And it'll also make the game sound very disorienting, but I actually kind of like that because I think it adds to the overall chaos that the room has. So yeah, after a few minutes, all of them will turn on, and you probably notice the frame rate is starting to drop a little bit. But that's how I accomplished that effect, and I think it looks really good. I'm really happy with it. I'm going to turn this back off for now, though. And we'll see they slowly turn all of them turn back off. It starts from the bottom and it works its way up. So once the top ones are off, you pretty much know the system is either fully on or fully off. But yeah, that's how I accomplished this room. I'm really happy with it. Once again, it took me a few days to make, but I think the work was definitely worth it. I think it looks really cool. And then that almost brings us to the last part of this tour here, and that would be the TV room. So here is the exterior of the TV room. It's these two shapes with these cool looking blue towers that are lit up. In the movie you get a good shot for a few seconds like this where the towers are kind of flashing like there's some blue lightning going on inside of there. So I may eventually put some redstone lights so it makes it look like it's actually flashing like lightning. But yeah, that's the exterior of the TV room. Over here we have some more little Oompa Loompa huts that you see briefly. I think they look really cool. They translate surprisingly well into Minecraft, I think, even though they're supposed to be perfect circles. And then you can see there's more of this foundation. So we are once again underground, and it goes all the way up to the build limit, where there's just a lot of these foundation towers, because in the movie you see them going off almost endlessly. There's just so much going off into the distance, so I really wanted to make sure I gave off that effect. And I may even eventually add some more, but as you can see, it has that problem again where the light is leaking through, and I actually have my render distance all the way up to 32 chunks, so this room is so large that it's just impossible to completely render it unless you have a mod that can push your render distance even further. So yeah, this is basically what you're going to see no matter what, but I almost kind of like it in a weird way. In the movie, this area is completely dark, but the light kind of makes it look very ominous and dream-like almost, so I don't know, I think it looks kind of cool. But yeah, here was the minecart track, and the fireworks and all of that were over there, and you go through a dividing wall just so when you're experiencing the fireworks room, you don't see that light bleeding in over in the distance. So that's why I have a dividing wall here that you have to go underneath. And then it brings you into this little tower-looking building right here, and this is, for the movie tour at least, the end of the line. We don't see this room on the inside, so I kind of had to improvise to make it all work. So as you can see here, there are 3 different signs. There's basically 3 different elevator stops in this area. The TV room, going through it, that door right there, will take you inside of it. We're going to do that in the next video though. This one's already getting pretty long. This is the up and out button, so pressing this will initiate the up and out sequence, and like most people, I use the tried and true method of just using teleportation commands of the command blocks. We'll talk about that more in detail in the next video as well though. And then the last spot here is the main elevator button, or the main corridor button, excuse me. This is one of the first areas that I added in my teleportation, quick travel elevator stops, whatever you want to call them. I originally wanted to keep it in here with the other ones as to not have to add in another elevator spot that would inaccurately be represented in the TV room. However, I'm probably just going to remove this to clean this whole area up a little bit. It looks kind of clunky, a little bit too game designy to have this right here. So I'm probably gonna, get rid of the main corridor sign and button and move that into its own designated quick travel elevator inside the room itself. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the glass elevator tour. I hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.